The first thing that can go wrong in any influencer marketing campaign is the types of influencers you select. Not knowing who to work with on a campaign is probably the biggest mistake. You have to figure out what types of influencers you want to work with. Now there's all kinds of buzzwords. There's macro and mega influencers, which are larger, typically have over 1 million followers. And then there's the micros and the nanos, and those typically have under 100,000 if you're a micro and under 10K if you're a nano. So really understanding the benefits. The megas and the macros are larger. So they're gonna have a broader reach and get you, it's a big awareness play. And then the micros and the nanos are gonna have lesser reach, but they're gonna have more engagement. So people really interacting with your brand. You have to understand here is where budget plays into effect. You could end up spending a lot of your budget on the larger influencers and only be able to afford 2 of them, whereby if you had more influencers working on a campaign, you might be able to carve up that content and get different stories and different pieces of content and have multiple influencers working on your brand or your project. So it really depends the size and what your key objective is. Once you've identified the size of the type of influencer you want to work with, then you have to really hone in on what vertical or category of influencers. There are influencers in pretty much every category. I know everyone talks about food and fashion and beauty, but there are influencers that cover general contracting and interior design and doctors and nurses. So really understanding and getting specific about the types of influencers that you want to work with. Oftentimes brands really just go very big and very general with an overarching content theme, but they're not honing in on very specific types of influencers that could benefit their product. For example, if you're a non-GMO food brand that is gluten and gluten-free and carb-free, maybe you want to be partnering with influencers who write specifically about Whole30 and paleo. So really carving and honing in on that message will then help you identify the right types and categories of influencers with who you want to be working. The second error that people make when doing an influencer campaign is time of year, seasonality, and theme. There's the Super Bowl and there's big occasions like Mother's Day and Father's Day where everyone is kind of vying for those eyeballs and wanting attention. Sometimes it makes more sense to think about a really unique theme that may be at a different time of year. So everyone's focusing on Black Friday. How come no one's doing anything in October? Thinking about under the radar themes, times of years, tying your brand in to different moments and occasions and celebrations and instances throughout the year could really help uplift the brand in a time when no one else is thinking about it. Here's an example for you. At Babbleboxx, we do all different types of collaborations, and oftentimes when we're doing fashion collaborations, we have food brands that want to be inserted into the story. So think festival campaign, and we have a licorice brand that wants to be in our festival collaboration. Why? Because it helps them reach a different audience, a different way to touch that audience, and at a different time of year. I'm going to go back to my project management days and discussing the third challenge in launching a successful influencer marketing campaign, and that is a clean scope of work. In order to work with influencers successfully, you need to have a very detailed set of guidelines to which they must adhere, and those guidelines have to be specific. What is the theme of the campaign? What's the start date? What's the end date? What dates do you want every single piece of content flighting on or being posted? Do you want the product shots to be lifestyle focused, whereas the influencers are in the imagery, or more product focused? Being really specific in every single detail is going to set the tone for a successful campaign. Now I know this next one is where it's going to get really tricky. I just finished saying that you need to be very specific in the scope of work, which brings me to my next point. You could be specific without being controlling. For the love of God, please don't overanalyze all the requirements and put too much control over the content that the influencers are generating. Too many rounds of reviews, too many edits from legal, that just really takes away from the creativities the influencers have to bring to the table. Give them the guidelines, but give them the flexibility to go out there and create the content that they are great at creating. Expectations. Expectations not just for yourself and for your team in running the campaign, but all of the stakeholders involved in this project. Influencer marketing must be understood. Yes, it can drive sales, but if that is your primary goal, it might not necessarily meet that goal. You have to find very specific influencers to meet a specific KPI. So really setting the expectations. Do you want awareness? Do you want engagement? Do you want sales and downloads or clicks? Or is this just an exercise of you generating a lot of content that maybe you're using for other marketing channels, which is amazing. Really having a clear set of expectations so that the performance of the campaign does not fall flat at the end of it. I hope the tips I shared today are helpful to you when you launch your next influencer campaign. And if you need any help along the way, we're here for you. You could always reach out to me, Sherri at Babbleboxx.com. Thanks.